Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town.
Mike Freeman, we just wrapped on another episode. It's done. It is done, man. We had the conversation. It's over. Jeremy Waldram joined us.
Jeremy Waldram,
man. The California transplant to Idaho, who turns out he's got deep roots in Idaho that he's been hiding. But yeah, what a conversation. What stood out to you tonight with our time with Jeremy?
Well, number one, California doesn't have the monopoly on great people, right?
Yeah.
Men in Town has taught us that. Turns out there's a slew of great people hiding out in Idaho. Maybe we need to get like a John Madden bus, drive around this great country, and we just do tour stops where we talk to people about living the rich man life, right? I don't know. Jeremy, can we, our listeners are going to have to get to it might be like the 2-hour mark when he talks about trials and blessings.
Yeah.
When he talks about transactional versus transformative, come on, right? And we're not, this is not intentional. I don't want our listeners to think we cooked up this scheme to bury some of the great things that Jeremy gives us, in the back third of the programming, just to make sure that they stick around. But man, Jeremy was powerful with some of the things. Then you want to talk about a hinge moment. You want to talk about a moment when faith became his.
Yeah. And here's the good news for you impatient listeners. Jeremy is sprinkling this stuff throughout, man.
What he
right.
It's
it's coming from the very beginning, and it's going all the way to the bitter end. And I loved, Mike, the discussion about space and reflection, and I just thought that was super powerful.
Soft
hearts. I mean, there's so much that I feel like we were just taught in our time with Jeremy, and so much that I'm excited to share with some other people that I love.
Yeah, here's the thing too, though, that the things that matter require work, right? So the things that we're talking about here are beautiful. They almost need to come in with the disclaimer, they're not easy.
Yeah, right.
The things we talk about, we don't talk about loving people that love us. We get into what does it mean to use love as leverage to make some change.
Yeah.
To those around us, right? To help. We get into hurricane cleanup.
Yeah, we talk a little Barry Humphries tonight.
Barry Humphries. That's becoming like an archetype in my mind now. Okay, as I listen to that story, who's my Barry Humphries?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Who's my Barry
Humphries? I mean, it was good stuff. So look, we see this all the time with our guests on Richest Men in Town, but there's so much to learn when we're willing to spend the time to listen. And I think if you take some time to listen to Jeremy Waldram, you're going to have some thoughts challenged. You're going to have some new ideas planted. And I think some good things are going to come from that. I mean, certainly for me, that's true after our conversation tonight with Jeremy.
Yeah,
I don't know,
simple answers, right?
Yeah.
Can we put ourselves in the right place at the right time on a regular basis to connect, right? To connect with heaven, to hear him, to daily patterns of personal worship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I think that one of the themes that ran throughout tonight was the importance of relationships, right? And so I think if anybody's listening to this and you're in a place in your life where you're struggling with some relationships, or you're looking to strengthen some relationships or grow some relationships, I think Jeremy gives some nuggets tonight on how to make that happen. So let's listen. Let's have a soft heart. Let's have an open heart, and let's let some of these things sink in deep and take some action on them. And enjoy your time tonight with Jeremy Waldram on this episode of The Richest Men in Town. So listen, we got Jeremy Waldram tonight, right? He's a California transplant into Idaho. So, he's navigating those treacherous waters.
That's abandon the plate, right? I mean, you got to abandon the license plate. You got to throw it in the river.
I think so. Yeah, you don't want to have that be able to get traced back to you.
Although we have had a few guests on the program, and they are quite successful in that transition.
Yeah. Let's see. Maybe Jeremy had to change.
I'm expecting full court press here. I'm expecting Idaho Tourism Department to be on the line and be like, thank you for having Jeremy on. And, I'm expecting, like, I'm going to get off this call and I'm going to walk out and talk to Kelly Freeman and say, you want to pack up and move to Idaho?
You know what? I could, I could be persuaded. Then I remember there's a winter involved.
Yeah. There's that. Yeah. And winter's like Halloween.
Yeah. Like I've been to Rexburg and that was rough, man. That was rough.
I went one time and Idaho did not put on the best face. A lot of brown.
It's like it was trying to chase me out of town is what it was trying to do. I don't know. Let's see. Let's open the doors and see what Jeremy's got to say about this.
Did you throw hatchets when you were in Idaho?
I didn't.
That's an Idaho thing, I think.
When I was in Provo the last time, I went to a hamburger joint and walked through the middle of a hatchet throwing place to get to the hamburger joint.
So was it a fight or was it an actual hatchet throwing place?
It was a hatchet throwing place, but there could have been a fight brewing. I mean, I feel that's a great place for a fight to break
out. It's hard to even tell, right? I actually did a group date at a hatchet throwing place. Reading has a hatchet throwing place now. So there you go.
Wow. That's interesting.
Jeremy, welcome to The Richest Men in Town. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
Good. We were just talking about things to do in Rexburg, and hatchet throwing came up. So
holy smokes.
I think that was the list right there.
I think that's probably pretty accurate in Rexburg.
There are a lot of snow activities and such.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, I'm looking forward to, friend of Tyler's a friend of mine. I'm looking forward to our time together and get to know you. In fact, I told Tyler I'm expecting you to sell Idaho so well that after our time together, I'm going to jump out and talk to my wife, and I'm going to want to pack up and head on up there. So, and then Tyler reminded me you guys have a winter.
Hey, yes, prepare yourself because Californians are not necessarily loved up here in Idaho. Right?
Okay. We did talk about that, and the question was on the drive in when you cross the border into Idaho, do you pull over, take off the license plates, and throw them into the woods?
You probably should. I mean, there might be some axe throwing activity if you don't, but I mean, seriously, that's probably the first thing that people do. You got to get to the DMV, change the light.
Yeah.
And you feel bad, but really it's just that real estate, Tyler, you'd understand this, but real estate prices just soared with all the people coming from California. And there's really not jobs here in Idaho to support the prices of housing. And so it's crazy. I mean, you had people, they were buying without any inspection, waiving inspections. There'd be 40 offers on houses. So it just priced out a lot of Idahoans. So I think that's where the bitterness comes from. But
yeah.
Priced out of paradise, right? I don't know, Tyler, if you're an American Idol guy, but the guy who won American Idol, you're looking at me like you're not.
Wait, I haven't seen any.
You're looking at me like you've never heard of the show American Idol.
Well, no, the last episode I saw was the one where that the guy sang the Ricky Martin song, She Bangs. What's the
that was like 1982?
Yeah, exactly.
Vita Loca?
It was like season 2 of American Idol.
I'm a Tongi, man. I'm a Tongi. Look him up. He's the LDS kid out of Hawaii. He won the whole thing. Touching story. Abe Freeman. I don't watch American Idol. Abe Freeman told me about him. He said, you got to watch the audition. I watched the audition tape and you will cry, man. You will cry.
To be honest with you, I will make a confession here. I have seen that audition because I do love that song by James
Monsters.
Blunt.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty intense, but
okay. But how about this?
Yeah.
I don't say this a lot, but I actually think his version's better than Blunt's. What?
Not interesting. I'd have to go back and review the tape.
Review the tape, man. Review the tape.
But hey, my question for you is, was Tyler pretending that he didn't watch American Idol, but he actually did watch it?
Yeah, no.
Look.
Hold on. Jeremy, he actually does shoot me a look. If you replay the tape, he looks like he shoots me the look like his hand is in the cookie jar.
A little bit.
Oh no, you're gonna out me on this international podcast.
Yeah,
that I watched.
It's American. Like that. It's the same thing with The Bachelorette. You know, it's like those two shows, guilty pleasures, man.
Yeah.
Hey, remove the guilt. Just enjoy.
Oh my God.
Anyways, I'm a Tongi, priced out of paradise. He had to leave Hawaii because same kind of idea, right? Can't afford to live in his own hometown.
People are moving to Hawaii and pricing out the locals.
I think real estate's just it's a crazy game.
I mean, it makes more sense in Hawaii, right? It's an island, for crying out loud. It's very limited, right? At some point, that's it, man.
Well, I'm hoping, Jeremy, that things are going well in Idaho. Looking forward to our time and learn a little bit about your journey.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think things are good here. It is a beautiful state. There's a lot to do, but yeah.
So how long have you been in Idaho now?
Are you missing California? Real quick, are you missing California?
Not really. I just returned there recently. Went down there actually for a Lakers game, and I mean, maybe LA is not a good gauge of like what's going on in all of California.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things I miss. The winters here can get, I mean, they're mild compared to a lot of places, but maybe 3 months of pretty cold weather. So I miss San Diego for that reason. But yeah, there's a lot to love here. I have to say that.
That's good.
So you actually invested time, resources to travel down and watch a playoff game?
Yeah, we watched Game 6. It was not pretty. The Lakers versus the Warriors, and my sons are huge Warriors fans, and so they've been begging me for a long time. I've never seen an NBA playoff game, and so I made a silly bet with my son. I said I don't think the Warriors are going to get out of the first round. So they did barely.
Right.
So I said, hey, let's do a Laker game. That would be a little easier because then we can choose from LA to Sacramento or San Fran. So yeah, we did it. It's more than you feel like you should spend on anything, but I think my sons will never forget it. I think it was cool.
Yeah,
it's an experience, man. That's cool.
It is the experience, but I would love for it to be a positive one, or I'd love for it to get the result. You know what I mean? If there was a way that I could just guarantee the live playoff ticket purchase with a victory, then I'd be all in.
Yes, if you could do that, because see, my 11-year-old son, he was pretty understanding. He realized, hey, this may not go our way, but I'm just going to enjoy the fact that I get to sit here and watch Curry warm up and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
my 8-year-old son. There were tears. There were because the Lakers fans they show no mercy. You know, they saw the Warriors jerseys and they were harassing my sons.
Yeah, what's worse? A California plate in Idaho or a Warriors jersey at a Laker game?
Oh yeah. That's a good one because it was pretty tough. So there was one spot in the game where one of the Lakers guys hit a half court shot right before the half.
Oh yeah, Reeves. Yeah,
I've got a pretty good video of my son. It was a foul on the other side. So yeah, but cool experience. It was definitely cool. And watching them do their videos of some of the players warming up, and you'll never believe this. I'm watching Stephen Curry warm up, and it was cool. It was worth doing. But
okay, so break it down for me. Kids, what's family look like?
So I have 2 daughters. One's a senior in high school, graduating this year.
Ooh, okay.
I have an 8th grade daughter heading to high school, and then 2 sons, 6th grade and 2nd grade. So 11 and 8 years old. So that's my family.
So you got a busy spring. You got an 8th grade graduation and a high school graduation.
Yeah, no, the high school one's definitely keeping us busy. Apparently here in our county, they don't do 8th grade graduations.
Oh, shoot, another good thing about Idaho.
I mean,
I'd move there just for that reason, man. Yeah, seriously.
Yes. So, my wife's kind of disappointed about it. She thinks it should be, a little bit more celebrated event, but I'm kind of with Tyler. I'm okay with,
I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, you did what you're supposed to do. Like if what's the alternative here? Is it like, there is none.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Anyway.
That's like I showed up to work, yes, you're supposed to show up to work.
You did what you're supposed to do. Good job.
Exactly.
All right. So are you having any nostalgia? Are you having any emotional response to your oldest daughter graduating high school?
Oh yeah, a ton, really. I mean, honestly, I think I'm 43. I don't know if it's just this age. I don't know if it's like midlife stuff, but it's like everyday nostalgia for me lately. Just so many things, just reflecting on so many different things in life. My parents are getting older, kid graduating high school. Just a lot of things like that are making me really reflect on life and all that. So definitely it's going to be different. And I think for the oldest leaving, it's going to change a lot of the dynamics at home with our family. So I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like yet, but I think everyone tells me that you notice the void.
Yeah. And she's headed off to BYU, right?
She's headed to BYU. We weren't quite sure where she was going to go, but yeah, that's where she's headed.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I can remember my kids graduating high school, and that time is, there's a lot of feelings. I had a lot of emotions about that, but then on top of it, when they're packing up and heading out, that just kind of compounds the whole thing, man. You're like, wait a second, just relax for a second. Let's just, but it's all good. I tell Mike all the time, and we have this discussion a lot because, I think we're all in that transition. Mike's got a son getting ready to go on a mission, so.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tyler, you're 48.
Yeah.
I'm 47. I'm about a week away from 48. I feel like 43 is like light years away from where I am. Like, I feel like Jeremy's a young buck. And I'm like 43, man. That was some good times.
Yeah, and I think
48's like
at 43 with a 2nd grader.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I mean, that keeps you in the.
That's it. Yeah.
That keeps the youth moving, man. But I think it's that's tough, man. I mean, but if you had to write the book, Jeremy, right? This is how you'd write it, and it's all good stuff.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a bittersweet thing, just it's like, I'm sure sending your son off on a mission, Mike, you're excited, but there's the feelings of like, all right, life will never be exactly the same. And, it's, how the dad doesn't get any phone calls later on, like everyone calls their mom, but it's like, is this it for me? Communication with dad. So I hope that doesn't go like that.
No, here's what happens, Jeremy. During the Celtics games, my phone is constant text message with Quinn. And the last game was just like, Celtics suck. I'm not watching anymore.
Are they going to take care of business? Are they going to take care of business to be the first team to do it?
I don't know. One game at a time, Mike Freeman. One game at a time.
Look at you.
That's where we're at, man.
Look at you dropping post-game cliches on me.
Yeah. No, the Heat have to be nervous.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, anyway, it is different because Mom does get the bulk of the communication, and you know what? Maybe rightfully so, right? I mean,
those were actually my exact words. Cause I mean, I love my dad, but yeah, I mean, it's like, he's just, and this is a kind of stereotype. I'm sure not every dad's like this, but my mom is an amazing listener.
mm-hmm.
You could talk to her about anything forever. My dad, it's like, I know that if I go 2 minutes, if my story is more than like 2 minutes, it's he's not going to be listening anymore.
So Jeremy, if that's the reality, right? I get it. I totally agree with that. But don't you feel on some level as a dad, you want to change that, right? Like you want to have that be different. How do you crack the code? How do you tap into Kelly's line of communication?
Well, I think you, Jeremy, hit on it. Like, we got to stop talking. We got to show some evidence that we are not going to be fixers, because, I think this has come up in recent conversations, Tyler, between us. Like, when a situation comes, and not that I have the answers, but I want to like front like I have the answers, and I want to just jump in and do some things. And I think that Kelly is gonna listen. Kelly's gonna ask good questions, and I'm gonna jump in and be like, "Here's the plan." It's like, "Well, Dad, it's kind of my life. You know what? I don't care. Here's the plan for your life."
Yeah.
So I think that there's something to be said for that. But I think too, like, we could take the reins, right? If I'm sitting waiting for my phone to ping with a text from my kids, I could just do kind of like a Tyler Gould thing Sunday morning, sitting there in the quiet, just reach out and start the conversation. I'll tell you guys, like, my anniversary was Tuesday, 25 years, right? Congrats. My son, way too late in the night, starts a conversation, and we go to bed at like 12:45. And the conversation was a question. "Hey guys, so you guys have been married 25 years. Congratulations. That's really cool. Hey, what would you tell your younger self about the last 25 years? Like, what would you tell yourself going into that? Like, for advice?"
So what would you tell yourself? Lay it on me, man. I've got 26. I'm still trying to figure it out. Lay it on me.
Yeah. And I got a lot of time.
I need to warn you, right? Because that led to like a 2-hour conversation, probably one of the richest that my living room's ever seen. Right? Pretty cool. But my take on that was my mission president, Lynn Grant Robbins, taught me that love is a verb. And if we are commanded to love, then that means there's agency. That means I can choose. So when I hear somebody struggling and they say they've fallen out of love with somebody, I say to that, bumpkus. Somewhere along the line, you chose to stop loving that person, or you chose your needs over that person, right? So that idea of love as a verb and having agency, love isn't some mystical thing, where it does evolve. And trust me, 25 years, that love has evolved and it has changed. It's better now than it ever has been. But man, it's a verb. Yeah,
the verb. It's a verb. I mean, I totally agree with that. I just, you got two that are tangoing, man. That's tough, right? I mean, I think this idea of like bliss, constant bliss, I mean, I think that the reality of relationships, it's work, right? It's hard. I think you have to remind yourself all the time of why you fell in love and what you can do to be a more active participant in that, right? Because I agree with that. I think that choices get made and people do choose to move in opposite directions sometimes. That's hard, man. 25 years. Jeremy, how long have you been married now?
So we're just over 21.
21, man.
Yeah, coming up.
Big deal.
All right, don't think I'm not going to turn this on you guys. Your kid throws you that question. What do you say?
Well, it's funny because I just had this. This is not original. I cannot take credit for this, but I was at work the other day and I was talking to this lady and I could see she was a little bit sad. And she told me that her husband had recently died and they had been married for 50 plus years. And I could tell it was a great marriage, you know, that they really loved each other. And he had an illness the last few years. So she was his primary caretaker, you know, day in, day out, you know, taking care of him. And she was a little bit sad. And I just asked her, you know, doing some things. Hey, what's the secret? What was it for you guys? And she said that every morning when I would wake up, I would ask myself, what can I do to make this man happy? And the coolest part, because, you know, someone
every day,
that's what she said. And but here's the cool part is that, you know, if I'm self-reporting, I might say something like that sounds pretty awesome, but do I really do that? This was the cool part. She said, and I'm convinced by the way he treated me that he did the same.
Wow.
And I was like, that's good stuff, right? That's good stuff. So it's that. I guess I would tell my kids that marriage is it's not all about you. You know, it's not what it's all about. And when you're making that commitment, that covenant, like it involves other people now, and not just your spouse, but children, other people involved. So it's bigger than you.
Yeah, I love that. I love it.
I just dig that you can talk to the woman and feel that they had something.
Yeah.
Right. He's gone. Yeah. He's not in her life. And you can feel that she had something rich.
No, it was palpable. It was palpable. It was obvious.
That's what I want, Tyler Gould.
Yeah. That's 50 plus years. You got 25.
That's what I want.
25 down, man. 25 to go.
Downhill.
And I did tell Abe, you know, that because Abe wants that, right? He said, like, man, how cool would it be to come home and have kids, right? And have that hero's welcome and like all that. So he's just kind of looking forward to some things, whatever. And we are not there, right? He's got work to do, but just that idea. And I said, you know, careful, son, because everybody wants to be the cute old couple sitting in the church pew, but nobody wants to do the work that cute old couple did to become who they are.
Right.
Right. Yeah. If you sat down with them and said, talk to me, right? Talk to me about 50 years of marriage. You're probably going to get a lot of that, you know, that quote, mutual toleration.
You know? Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get a lot of
talks about that, right?
Yeah. You're going to get a lot of sacrifice. You're going to get a lot of putting their needs first, you know, and a lot of biting your tongue, a lot of saying sorry when you're not the one that messed up, right? All of those things. But there's a price to pay to get to that.
For sure. Yeah, I just think it's interesting, right? I mean, like with especially, you know, going back to that idea of, you know, I love Abe's thought of like the hero's welcome coming home. You know, and that is a cool thing. You know, especially as they're young. As they get older, it's more of a skeptical look as you walk in the door. Like, dude, you're harsh and my mellow.
Yeah,
you know, or like kind of things.
Yeah. Or your wife's been saying, "Wait till your dad comes home all day."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think, you know, I think there's something to be said for the ability to weather the storm, right? And I think that we're sort of in this time in history, maybe culturally, where it's like we have an expectation that things should be near perfect all the time, and if they're not, then I'll just abandon what I have and go in search of the near perfect, and it doesn't exist, right? And so that cute old couple that's sitting in the pew has just weathered storms, right? They've just been through it. They've been willing to just, you know, ride it out and like you said, say sorry and be quick to say, I love you. Even when sometimes that's not an easy thing to say. Maybe it's not an easy thing to hear from your partner, but you know, I think that's the ticket, man. I don't know. I got 24 to go. 24. I'm at 26, man. Got everybody beat.
Let's go.
Tyler, it sounds like you're talking about the transfer portal culture.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%, man.
Right? Isn't that so
100%.
indicative of what we're, that's right.
That's so true, man. That's interesting. I mean, it is. It's like, right. I'm not appreciated here like I think I should be. And who's the judge of that appreciation? It's you, right? It's like, it's such a self-centered view of like what I think I am worth, and I'm going to go find that thing. Now, look, I'm all for you make your own road, but I think there's times when you got to be committed, man. You know, it's that water the grass where you are, right? I mean, it's that theory as well. And I don't think a lot of people subscribe to that way of thinking these days. You know,
well, and it's not that, I mean, obviously there's good reasons for something like the transfer portal, but just
100%.
more broadly speaking, I mean,
yeah,
my daughter, case in point, basketball player in high school. We're at the biggest high school in Idaho. She's 5'2". So it wasn't looking good for her to make the varsity team, you know, for that. So I started looking at other high schools in the area. There's some private Christian schools around here that I felt like she'd get some good playing time. So I reached out to one of them and told him, hey, you know, my daughter's looking to transfer there. And he wrote me back a pretty humbling response, you know, and he said, look, I have 3 kids. They're all through high school now. One was a star player. Another one, you know, hardly made the team. Another one, this and that. But he said, you know, there was a lot of value in my son learning how to work really hard and not necessarily be the star of the team, but learn how to stick it out, finding his role on the team, even if that wasn't star player. So look, sir, I respect what you're trying to do for your daughter, but I think it may be more beneficial for her to stay there and ride it out and learn how to. I was like, wow. Said, all right, man. All right.
Took the time to write that though.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought though, right? Because, you know, that whole idea of weathering the storm. And I think like there's a ton of lessons learned. I remember when Quinn was a sophomore in high school, you know, he was playing soccer and he said to me when high school soccer came around, all I want to do is make varsity. That's my goal. He makes varsity and he sat on the bench like all year, you know. He said to me about 4 or 5 games into the season, I should have played JV, man. You know, I would have been playing some ball. But you know, and I think there's some lessons learned in that adversity that's huge, you know. I love it, man. That's a bold email to fire back.
No, it was, and I'm sure he was bracing himself because I'm sure some parents are like, but it was kind of a humbling reminder for me, like, hey, Jeremy, what do you really care about for your kids? Like basketball, like, or is it about their character development and what's Cameron going to get from staying there and supporting the team? And guess what? She did. She made the team, but she sat the bench the whole time. But she developed and she realized that basketball is not her identity and it's not the only thing important in her life. And so he was dead on. You know, he was right.
But that's the fruit, right? That's the fruit. That's the harvest. We're not in the business of faking that stuff. You can't fake that stuff. Yeah. Life is gonna bear some kind of fruit. Like, what are you putting into the process? Because you're right. You could have an amazing player with no character, right? Or her identity is basketball and that's all she knows. And when she's challenged in other aspects, she's lost, right? I think the idea of going through things that develop character and they just so happen to be amazing sports or things that we grow to love. But I mean, and I love that coach's response because that coach is in the character game.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about character counts and you go into some of these gyms and they got pillars of character and signage or whatever, but it's like, you got to walk it, right? You got to understand that we're in the, you know, that coach is in the business of growing human beings, right? We're in the business as dads of growing human beings. What kind of human beings do we want? And it's the law of the harvest, right? It's just like it's like growing potatoes up there, Jeremy.
That's right. That's right. It's fairly lucrative.
Oh man, I think that's interesting. I mean, there's a whole, we could go down that rabbit hole all night. You know, the idea of what builds character, right? Is it jumping from one thing to the other? Is it Is it loss? Is it, there's a lot of things in there, but all right, Jeremy.
But hold on. But one last thought on that transfer portal mentality. It is these kids looking around and saying, this isn't meeting my needs.
Right.
It's not what can I bring to the team. It's not even what this coach can teach me. It's, you know what, this social media platform for this place isn't going to give me the exposure that I need to get the money or to get the whatever, right? So I got to bounce because I got to work on my brand. Like, what? Right? But that's the mentality. Yeah. So when you say that transfer portal mentality, that's a perfect analogy of a whole lot of other things that we got going on in our society, in our world. It's about me. What can you do for me? Right? And I can't think of, to go back to what we were saying earlier, just about healthy marriages, healthy relationships with other people, the enemy is me to that. Right? If I wake up and I'm like, well, what can Kelly do for me today? Times 365 days, times 25 years, ain't gonna happen. Yeah. There's gotta be some give. There's gotta be some service. There's gotta be some losing yourself, right? What are the needs of other people around you?
And I dare you to vocalize that question to her every morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
See how that goes.
Exactly.
I'll be a different
conversation in Jeremy's doctor's office, man.
Yeah, I'll be up on Jeremy's front porch and be like, hey, remember that dare you made? You got a pool house I can live in?
You're welcome. You're welcome here.
But Mike, then the question is, and Jeremy, Mike's sort of, he's already got kids. He's succeeded with his children, and they're some of the best people I know. So
we ain't done. We ain't done. You haven't seen nothing yet.
Jeremy's in the middle of it, but yeah, then the question is, like, what do you do as a parent because we do live in this time where, you've got social media, kids feel like they're missing out on things constantly, right? There's this heightened level of comparison all the time, right? It's like this like built-in cultural one-upsmanship that is part of where we're at now. And so to dial that back and say to someone who is, your son who's in 6th grade, or, Macy going into your freshman year, I need you to be thinking about other people first, right? The first question is, how can we serve other people? And I don't know, what's the answer to that, Jeremy? How do you instill those values fighting it? I feel like that's swimming upstream in a big way.
Well, it's kind of like Kiefer said last week, right? I feel like I'm losing the battle.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you do that, Jeremy, against that tide?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm definitely not to that richness yet. Certainly struggling with that. But I guess the thought that comes to my mind is recently with an assignment that I was given, we were supposed to call some consultants underneath us. And as they were giving us training and we were talking about, how do we prepare these consultants to do what we need them to do? The instruction that I was given was, you need to be a witness of this first. And then I'd be able to take that and help the consultants do the same thing. So I think I have to be demonstrating that in my own life. My kids have to see me serving other people, being about other people, not being selfish myself, and being involved, in things opportunities to go help other people. One benefit of the snow in Idaho is it gives a lot of opportunities to, go out there and take care of driveways and things like that. And that stuff, I think it speaks volumes. I think that's what the kids are going to pick up on, that, Dad's out there, shoveling this lady's driveway and that kind of thing. So I have to live that. I gotta get that deep in my own heart, live that, to have any chance for my kids to be able to see that.
Yeah, I agree with that. We talk a lot on this podcast about the idea of modeling, and if you think about the things that you value in your own, that you feel are of worth of your personality or your character. I mean, a lot of that is because you've seen someone else, whether it's your father or your mother or someone else that's stepped up and shown you what that looks like. And Mike, I was thinking, the other day we were having a conversation and you said, anybody that's willing to give up time to go serve others is a miracle. Right. And I was just thinking, like, man, that is I think, where is that born from? And I think Jeremy's spot on. It's just, it's shoveling the driveways. Honestly. I mean, that's what gets you there.
Well, especially in today's time, in today's age, right? Not only are we unlimited in what we can think about, we're really unlimited with the things that we can do with that time.
Yeah.
Where we can read books, you can jump on the phone in your pocket and access some of the best universities this country or this world has to offer. You can learn anything right now. The fact that you'll put things aside and get in your car and drive a couple blocks and help somebody who's struggling, that is a miracle.
Yeah.
If you think about that, right? And even better if we can, because we've probably had it imprinted, right? Jim, if we have an opportunity to hang out and get to know your life a little bit, there's probably some people in your life that have done that modeling, right? And that's who we're trying to remember, because it's had the impact on their lives. Their example has impacted our life, and we're trying to pay that forward and do the same for other people. But a whole lot has to go right for people to make the choice to forget themselves and serve other people. Right? We got to be in a spot. And the real power is when you're not right and you acknowledge that service is going to help you get right. Yeah. Because I think even the natural man response to not being right is like, oh no, man, I got to hunker down. I got to close the blinds. I got to work on me. Well, actually working on me is best done
working for somebody else. Yeah.
Working on somebody else. And then in the middle on that errand, you're probably gonna learn some things about you.
That's like the biggest irony of the gospel of Jesus Christ right there, losing yourself for other people. And it feels kind of scary, like you're letting go. Like, well, hold on, I have needs here in my own house. It's hard to trust or understand that if you will do that and you will put other people first and you will work for that, it's amazing. But it's one of the great truths.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you talk about, I think we've all had this thought before when you've been inundated with opportunities to serve, right? You just have a lot of it.
Well said.
I think I've had the thought before, like, all right, this is a lot of hours. This is a lot of time away from where instinctively I feel like I should be. But in that time, I remember I've said to myself many times, like, just remember people are watching and taking notes, right? At home, they're taking notes. Yeah, it may suck that you're not there to watch the Dodger game in the evening, but they're taking notes and they know why, right? So, yeah.
But Tyler, you've made this point a couple of times lately that we can be more intentional in letting people know why.
I think that's
we don't want to necessarily just imply that through osmosis they're going to learn that we're doing this because of our faith in Jesus Christ, or we're doing this because other people have done this to us. It'd be really cool to knee to knee, sit down with a kid, eyeball to eyeball, and let them know, do you understand? I just want you to understand why I do what I do. Maybe tell a story about something that was done for you, right? The other night, I'm in a sacred place. We're helping somebody who's really struggling. And there's a priesthood leader there helping right by the side of this person. And we're having a moment, and I asked this person, would you be here if it wasn't for the person right next to you right now? And I said, no. There's no way I would be here without the love of this person next to me. And I see that's powerful, right? And to acknowledge it and to be intentional about, I don't think he's ever going to forget that answer.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever going to forget that experience. And we could just assume it, but man, this podcast has taught me, connect those dots. So just make sure that people are understanding. You feel that right now? Because I feel that right now. Why do you think we feel that right now? Oh, that's the Holy Ghost. That's testifying of truth, right?
Yeah.
Can we be a little more intentional, especially with the young people in our life? Can we be more intentional and make sure that they understand exactly what we're going through, right? Exactly why we're doing the things that we're doing. I think that there's some power there.
No, but I agree. I think that intentionality of like, of letting people know, not, and there's a lot of things that I think that we assume that people pick up from us, and that's not the case, right? I mean, the way that we interact with our own faith, I think there's an assumption that those people around us understand that, and they, they're picking up why you're there. I think that we have to, I feel like for me, it's important to be intentional about talking about why, I'm doing.
Well, I think every once in a while when you're in the mirror and you're folding that, you're tying that tie and you're cinching it up, look yourself in the mirror and say, why am I about to do what I'm about to do?
Yeah.
Right. Let's be intentional about it. I mean, I think Tyler, you and I are doing some coursework, a little side learning. But I mean, just this idea of checking our assumptions. And I think as we check those assumptions, we raise the intentionality with which we're living this life. Man, I was talking to somebody the other day. She is struggling. If you saw her pile, you'd run from it, right? And she's overwhelmed. But the beautiful conversation was, isn't even this beautiful? Like, isn't even this the worst day, guys? The worst day is still the pen in our hand and our ability to write how we interact with other people, what we choose to do with the minutes, the hours, right? Whatever we got left. And we had a moment where she said, yeah, Mike, this is rough, but even this feels beautiful because I have faith. I'm handing it over, right? I'm not worried about it. And even this is pretty freaking awesome if you think about it. I'm interested, Jeremy, to know a little bit about, we talked about this modeling, like take me back. Where did you grow up? Talk to me about your parents. Talk to me about that world.
Yeah. So I was born in Eastern Idaho, and my parents, my mom and dad, they were born in Pocatello, Idaho. I thought it was a big city before I lived in California. Like, it's not that big. But they lived there. Their parents lived there. So a lot of, Waldram and my mom's side, Decker roots. 8 brothers, 8 people in my family, 8 kids in my family. So 4 boys, 4 girls. Not sure how they kind of worked it out like that, but I was the 4th. So an older brother, 2 older sisters, 2 younger brothers, 2 younger sisters. My dad was a school teacher. My mom was a homemaker. So teachers don't get paid a whole lot in Idaho. That's probably typical for a lot of states, but he picked up and moved our family to a small town in California when I was about 7 years old. And it's pretty interesting. And my mom tells the story that she had never been there before until they had made the decision to move, driving the cars. And it's funny because the one recollection I have of that being 7 years old is I'd never been to California, but you just have the idea of California is like the place. So I remember being in one of those brown station wagons with like the brown paneling, and I had my window rolled down, and I had my arm on the top, and I'm like, I'm going to California. I just felt like that's the coolest thing in the world to go to California. So we this town is called Tehachapi, and so as we're rolling through like Mojave and, desert, like nothing. My mom, she's just like, where are you taking me? But yeah, I mean, went to California there and had a good life. My dad made ends meet. There were times when he was working probably 3-4 jobs. He was in the military reserves, and he taught private music lessons, taught band in school. He's even delivering Domino's pizzas at one point, just to make ends meet for our family and allow us to do the things that we all had interest in doing. So that's kind of my background, or it was, and then.
Can I ask a quick? And I don't know, this may not be a fair question. When did you realize just what your dad was doing for you?
Not until I was a dad, an adult, and started taking care of my own family. And then you start to realize those things, like, holy smokes, my dad, what, like, that seems like a nothing growing up, like, oh, it's an easy decision, just go to California. But for him to leave all their family, all their support behind, and take a family of 8 kids to an unknown town in California. Yeah. But I didn't appreciate that until I was in that same position myself, just doing those things for my family.
Yeah. That hustle, right? And the cool thing is he's probably doing everything he's doing so that you wouldn't notice, so that it wouldn't skip a beat. Hey, right. I need a new baseball glove. Yeah, son. And he just delivered pizzas to make that stuff happen. Right.
And there's a story. I mean, I kind of feel bad about this, but my dad had on his bed. It kind of makes me, tear up just thinking about this a little bit. But he had this little thing on top of his bed where he'd put all his loose change. Back when we actually used money and change, and he would throw all his loose quarters and dimes and nickels in this little basket. And kind of embarrassing just thinking about it now, but I remember I'd go into his room a few times, and I was going to a ball game or something, and I wanted to take some of those quarters and have it. And I didn't know at the time, but I thought I was kind of taking that from him. I didn't realize, and down the road I felt so guilty about it. And I'm like, Dad, I'm so sorry. Like, I took a lot of change from your basket. And he's like, Jeremy, what do you think I put that there for? That was for you kids, a little extra that I had for you guys to do what you need to do. And I was just like, man, like, hey, I'm a horrible person for thinking I'm stealing from my dad, who's like working.
You just wanted a snow cone after the game. Right?
I just wanted a snow cone. Like, there was a chance that I would catch the foul ball and be able to get a free hot dog, but it wasn't guaranteed. So yeah,
I just wanted to buy some Garbage Pail Kids and some Now and Laters. That's it, Dad.
Make sure I had that in case.
Wow.
That's cool.
Jeremy, what did faith look like in your family growing up?
Yeah, so kind of interesting. My dad is kind of very the way he grew up and the way his father was. They kind of very black and white, I guess I would say, on things. It was kind of like, this is what's right, this is what's not right, and like this is what we do. And my mom, she didn't know her biological father, and her stepdad committed suicide, and she really none of her family was involved in church faith. My mom as a child went to church by herself and was involved in faith. And so very, very interesting couple. Like, when you put those two together, they made it work. But we definitely, faith was always a big part of my life. I mean, probably a central part, I would say, and don't really ever remember a day of not, going to church services on Sunday, unless there was a good reason not to, or we were sick. The Sunday was the Sabbath day. And I mean, I remember my dad would get phone calls and someone would call in. It was somebody from a business or whatever. And I would just hear him say, hey, look, Carl, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but today is the Sabbath day. We worship the Lord on this day. So if you want to call me back on another, that's exactly how he would say it, and you're California. And I'm like, Dad, I don't think Carl feels the feeling. But that's how it was. And so, just referring to my dad a little bit, having 8 kids, and we've all made our share of mistakes and maybe didn't go exactly the way that he felt like things would go. And so I think he's been humbled a lot, and he's definitely a lot softer of a man and a person now, just dealing with kids not making decisions that you think they should. And so I think that kind of rigidity that he had, I think we kind of broke that a little bit. And they were just a very nice balance, where my mom was this very soft, tender, like, hey, I know what it's like to struggle with questions about faith or whatever. And so let's talk about it. And you could do that with her. And my dad was more the one, like, unwavering commitment to God that you always knew where he stood. And I think in some ways I needed both of those, right? I needed that unwavering commitment side and seeing him live like that. But I also needed that side of my mom to be able to say, hey, I know this is the ideal, but I'm not always there. And here's where I am. And I have to, so help me work through that and get to the ideal. And so I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how it was for me.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think that I like that idea, right? I mean, I think that even in with my own family, like I want that same type of balance, right? I think it's important to be able to see that there's this commitment that is real and that means everything, but at the same time, it's okay to struggle and to ask questions and to work through some things, right? I mean, that's that self-discovery that we want, right? I mean, that's what fosters that.
Well, I think it's a living example right there in front of you of how different faith can look.
Yeah.
Like faith, no one faith journey is the same. And I think that we read this two-dimensional, we have the amazing scriptures, right? Scriptures are the word of God, and they've touched our hearts and they've changed our lives. But sometimes that two-dimension needs to have a living example. And I think the fact that you can have a living example of faith in Jesus Christ look as stark in contrast as your mom and your dad looked, you as a young kid looking at that can look and say, this is a cool set of bookends, right? Like, this is there's no one way to do this. And I think the older I get, the more I'm really wrestling with black and white. I think black and white is a wonderful way to view things, but you got to sprinkle in a little mom too.
Yeah. I think nuance is key, right? So Jeremy, as you're growing up in the house with mom and dad and all your siblings, is there a time when their faith becomes your faith and becomes your own?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I know a lot of people, it's kind of maybe a gradual thing that occurs over time, but for me, I guess I was a little bit precocious, I would say, or kind of I matured a little bit quicker than some of my peers, but I was a pretty difficult kid, I would say, and we did all the right things as a family, but my heart certainly wasn't there. And probably that I cared more what my peers thought about me. Like, I just really wanted to fit in, wanted to be accepted. I mean, this Idaho kid coming to California and a station, like I had to fit in, and that meant making a lot of choices based on what people thought of me instead of what I wanted to do. So if I had to point to a spot where it really changed, I had done some things that weren't good, and I was in a small town, and it kind of became obvious. My whole family knew about it. And so I was pretty embarrassed, and I came home that night, and my dad did like the worst thing that you could possibly do to a kid: go to sleep, we'll talk about it in the morning, kind of thing. And so
I bet you slept real well that night.
Exactly. So I'm sleeping. In fact, I slept on the couch in the living room, and I have an older sister. She's not too much older than me, but we didn't get along very well. I was like the typical, like, young pestering kid, that would bother her and annoy her. And I felt like she was too judgmental and too rigid. And so I go to sleep that night as much as I can. And I wake up, and my sister is sitting on the couch, and I'm like, oh man, I'm going to hear it from her. Jeremy, you're an idiot. Why'd you do this? Like, you're embarrassing our whole family. And my sister, gave me a hug and said, Jeremy, I just want you to know how much I love you. And boom, like melted, man, just melted. Like to feel someone love you when I was not expecting that from her. I knew I didn't deserve it. That's what changes hearts. That's what doesn't. So I don't remember the exact timing, but it was shortly after that where I was able to give space, for God and faith to enter my heart a little bit. Just, I think by that kind of cracking a little bit from my sister doing that. And so you mentioned the scriptures earlier, and I started taking the scriptures seriously. I started studying the scriptures and reading the word of God. And it was it changed me, completely changed me. Little by little, I just felt something that I was like, I want this in my life. Like I'm a better person. And here was really the real fruit of it, or how you knew, there was a real change, is I wanted so bad to be popular. And I actually probably was. This was in my late middle school, early high school years. And I had a lot of friends, and a lot of those friends didn't really live the standards that were conducive to having faith in God. And I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice that I could stay with those friends and keep doing what I had been doing all along and maintain my status, or I could choose new friends and I could go in a different direction. And just by that faith that was building in my heart, I was able to make the decision to totally abandon that friend group. And I don't remember this, but my mom was like, yeah, you were pretty sad. There were a lot of tears, and you talking about you didn't have a lot of friends for a little while, because I totally left that group. But I had other friends come along that were good friends and true friends. But that was the beginning for me. That was really from that point on, my faith grew, and I was committed. Obviously not perfect, but committed to trying to do what I thought God wanted me to do. And it really was that experience.
Does your sister know that?
She does. Yeah.
I love that, Tyler. We talk about these hinge moments. And I have more people around me that just look incredulously at me when I bring this up. Right. And then the more that they start thinking about it, you can see kind of a light come on, and like, oh yeah, that conversation with your sister changes everything, right? Alters the trajectory of your life. I mentioned 25th anniversary. I actually had an exercise on the day of my anniversary. I just opened up a Google Doc and I typed in moments that made this 25-year anniversary possible. And I came up with 7 or 8 things that if they don't happen, I don't marry Kelly Freeman. Right? And Grace doesn't happen, and Abe doesn't happen, and our 25 years of life doesn't happen. And I think that is incredible. Because if you think about it, if you reverse engineer that, if we know the moment of impact on a person's life, and we can maybe go forth and try to create those, where we can step into the role of your sister when someone is struggling, right? It's almost like President Nelson's conference remarks. Hey, the person that comes home early from the mission, the couple that gets a divorce, they don't need your judgment. They need our love. They need us to just draw close. And your sister didn't go through some soliloquy there, right? It wasn't the script of, okay, read this when brother screws up, right? That wasn't that. It was simply like, hey, man, I got you. I just want you to know I love you.
There's a lot of things there in that story. I mean, I just think like making the decision of friends at that age is crazy to me, right? Because I mean, we've all been there, and we've all had our own kids be there. I mean, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, that's a rough time period. And to make that kind of pivot in the middle of that is wild. That's wild.
I would love to have a podcast episode one night, Tyler, where you and we just talk about nights we spent sleeping on the couch. Because I can, the second you said that, I remembered my night on the couch waiting for my mom to wake up because I had something I needed to tell her and we needed to have a talk. And it wasn't going to be a go to your bedroom and catch her when you catch her. I needed to catch her because we needed to talk, right? I just think that there's something powerful about a young man that says, and tonight I'm going to sleep on the couch because tomorrow morning's going to be a doozy.
Yeah. But, here's the thing that I think is interesting, right? Because when you talk about faith and I know people who have, and some of my own siblings that felt like the decision wasn't theirs. And so therefore they didn't want to participate in that thing, right? Because they felt like forced. It was forced.
It happened. It happened to them.
Yeah. Right. And so I love that sort of reflection and that self-realization where you can look back and go, okay, these are some of the things that happened in my life that helped me to embrace this for myself, right? To come to my own understanding of this thing. And then you fast forward as a parent, right? And now you're in your dad's shoes or your mom's shoes or a combination of the two, right? And so many times you want to be able to say, listen, just because I said so, like that's it. Like, I can't tell you how many times Ricky and I have had conversations away from the kids where I'm like, I went through those things so they didn't have to go through those things, right? Like I did that dumb thing, like don't do it again. But this ability to kind of let our children have the same transformative experience that we had, that's hard. And how do you create that? Or do you create that? Or do you just put the bumpers on and say, okay, they're going, and if I have to punt them back into the middle every once in a while, then so be it.
Yeah, Tyler, I was thinking that, because I've had a lot to think about with that. I've had 4 siblings in the last few years, that have kind of lost their way with faith and my children. And so thinking about some of those things and really, I don't have the answer, but what I've come to realize is it really is all about the condition of the heart. And we talk about softness of heart and hardness of heart. And I think about every time in my life where I was motivated to get closer to God or to move forward in my faith, it was some experience where I felt the love of God. And there was something where my heart was softened enough where I could give place to whatever it was that I needed to hear, whatever it was that I needed to know to go in a certain direction. So really what we are heart tenderizers. We're heart softeners like that. Okay.
I like that.
That's our role, right? What can I do to help my kids have a soft heart? What can I do for myself to have a soft heart? And that definitely goes down to the repentance every day, because if you're repentant every day, you're going to have a soft heart every day. And that's what we offer up, right? A broken heart, a contrite spirit. And so that's really what we're trying to do for people, is help their heart be in the right condition. We can't force in a certain message to them. We can't force them in a certain direction, but we can love, because love is the greatest way to soften a heart. And so that's my job really, and how to do that exactly with my kids, or how to do that with my siblings or whatever, half the time, how to do that with myself. And it is easy, really easy to get your heart hardened. And a lot of things will do it.
Man, I love
David
that.
Hill. That's David Hill right there.
Yeah, I absolutely. I love that idea of, help their heart be in the right condition. And then you said love is the perfect tenderizer, right? That's what does it. And then as you're saying that, you think about that experience with your sister on the couch, right? And that's exactly that's the formula.
Well, and you said when you recounted that experience with your sister, you said melted.
Yeah.
Right. Almost like whatever hard, whatever cold, whatever frosty thing you had going on, even with her, right? Because you said your relationship with her wasn't so hot. Melted. I love that.
Yeah, Mike. I mean, I think I remember my puffed out chest just kind of, just kind of going down and softening. And I was crying. This like proud little teenager. I was crying.
Yeah.
So can I drill down on this idea of giving space? Right. I love that wording, and I don't know if you're Alma 32 in it right now or
no. It definitely that's probably where I got it from. I mean, I hate to go back to my siblings, but I've just probably my biggest challenge, Goliath, in the last while is knowing how to be committed to God and at the same time being committed to my siblings and my family, and how to maintain a relationship with both of them. And I believe it's possible, but it's really hard, and I have to keep working at it. So that that came up the other day for me. I woke up kind of early in the morning. I'm not a morning person, but I woke up and it was early and I couldn't go back to sleep. And my mind was taken actually to Alma 32. And I went and I started reading it. And I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. I mean, that's exactly it. Alma goes to talk to some people who used to be faithful. And he finds two different groups, right? He finds a group that their heart is not ready. They're not ready to hear it. So he doesn't even bother. He knows those words are just going to fall down. And then he finds the other group that because of their circumstances, they had been humbled and that heart was ready. And so, yeah, it talks about in there, giving space for that. And so that's really all you need to do. I've listened to a lot of, there's some podcasts about people coming back to faith, leaving faith and then coming back, and specifically about the church. And every one of those experiences, it was always some spiritual type experience or love experience where their heart got softened and they were able to give space for maybe the way I'm seeing this is not right. Maybe the way I handle that is not right. Maybe my assumptions I've made are not right. And to be able to just give space for that, an opportunity for that to be able to grow into something else. And then that's what that's what led them back, is being able to find that space.
When I think that the journey back is theirs, right? The journey back is agency. The journey forward for us is agency. I think of a lesson Will Barnett taught us a couple episodes ago. Tyler's just like, we throw love out there and we don't throw it out there with conditions. We love to love. We don't love to love them back. We love to love. And as we love, we keep people's hearts hopefully softened, right? And in those soft hearts, there's place, right? There's some space, and there's some space for a seed to be planted. There's some space for maybe remembering some things, or there's some space but it's just like, look, brother, I'm going to love you. How about that? Mother, I'm going to love you. There's no conditions to this love. I don't need anything. I don't need you to do something for me to qualify for love. And I'm convinced, and I probably shared this before, but I'm convinced that if I stood in front of young people right now, in a church setting or without, and I just had a thermometer gauge of love, right? Almost like the fundraiser, goal-setting fundraiser thermometer. And I had a measure of the thermometer, and I said, what if this represented God's love? What would happen to it when you sin? And I think that young people today think it goes down. And like, that's becoming one of my kind of drum beats, Tyler, is that everywhere I go, I'm having that conversation, and I'm hoping that people can feel that it doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't go down.
I just think too, I think too, like I love that idea of loving someone that maybe could be difficult to love, right? And what that does in that moment, and I can't help but think, Jeremy, about your mom. The description of your mom and the way her faith was and her interaction with faith. And just that, my impression is that idea of giving someone some grace to be able to question and to work through some things and to kind of walk a path a little bit to find some things out on their own. I mean, that's important. And I think too, like that judgment side of it, Mike, I mean, you know, I was having a conversation with actually one of my siblings who hasn't been active in the church for as long as I can remember. Right. And we were having a conversation. At the end of the conversation, I said, well, you know what? I love you. And I love what you're doing and blah, 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 blah. And I was just kind of, you know, it was a throwaway, right? It was just this conversation. It was like a throwaway. And like, she stopped and she's like, you don't know what that means to hear you say that. Right. And I think the ability to embrace people where they're at and not have an expectation of where they should be at before that love is granted is a big deal. Right.
And that's the Savior. Look at the Savior's life.
Yeah.
How easy is it to love people that love you? Right?
Yeah, right.
It's easy. That's not his invitation. His invitation isn't to serve the people serving you.
Yeah.
The invitation is to go to those that are despitefully using you and pray for them and love the people that aren't feeling any love. Go to the leper, right? Go to the outcast and be with them with no conditions or strings attached. And I think that there's just something powerful there with like every invitation he gives us shouldn't be easy. If it's easy, we're probably choosing the easy road. His invitation is not easy. His invitation was to change the world. He was a revolutionary. And I think we're just like, yeah, I'll give to the kettle when it's Christmas time and the people are out there ringing bells, and I'll drop a couple quarters. Right. Well, that's great. Not knocking it. But I think the invitation is to actually do more.
10X it. We got to go Lester. No, I agree. I mean, as you're talking about all of that, Mike, as you're talking, I'm thinking about Jeremy's sister sitting on the couch on the edge of the couch while Jeremy's asleep, waiting for him to wake up to sort of have that moment, right? I would love to have. What's her name, Jeremy?
Her name is Misty.
Yeah, we'll just honor Misty. I would love to know what Misty didn't wake up and say, I'm going to change Jeremy's life today, right? Yeah. It would be interesting to know what was going on in Misty's head and heart she probably just knew, wow, little bro stepped in it. And he's probably maybe some empathy, right? Like, oh man, if I was in his shoes, maybe I'd want a hug. Yeah. I don't know. But that's the thing that is amazing to us, right? The people that change our lives didn't wake up and say, I'm going to go change Mike's life. They're just there when they needed to be there. Showed up, had love in their heart, moved upon by the Holy Ghost, said what needed to be said.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the formula, right? If we're talking about our own kids and how do we, how do we keep the bumpers up or the guides on? I mean, I guess the answer is it's just love, right? And right, it's showing that love. I just think that's and that's not always an easy thing to do, as modeled by Jeremy at 7th or 8th and 9th grade, right?
Oh, I would have despised 7th grade.
Well, so Jeremy, you need to know this show is really therapy for me. After one episode recently, I had talked to the guys on the show about maybe wrong place, wrong time, saying something to Abe and trying to take advantage of a teaching moment, and it was no moment to be teaching. So I went to him and we talked, and I said, hey, I need to work on this, and I'm sorry. And we talked with Kelly and Abe, had a good conversation. And then we got to laughing about things or whatever. And I told him that when I talked to Tyler about this, it reminded me of a time that I had overreacted when my son was little. And it was way overreaction, Jeremy. Like it's not my proudest moment, right? Kid stole a Happy Meal toy or something.
I think he was given that toy, by the way.
Yeah, anyways, it's a long story, but it's not my proudest moment, right? So I'm telling Abe, I'm recounting this experience with Abe, and he's like, yeah, I was little and I don't really know too much. The only thing I remember, Dad? I'm like, oh no, here we go. Like, the time you the way you lost it, the way you yelled, the way you took a present from under the tree and threw it in the trash, whatever. He said, I remember the next morning you were in my bedroom when I woke up and you hugged me. And I'm like, well, dang if I don't do something right every once in a while.
Yeah.
Right? Like through that.
Right.
Not my proudest moment as a dad, but in his mind, in his memory, when I said, you know why I did that? Because Grandpa came to me in a dream that night and he hugged me.
Well, there's two things at play, right? In that moment with Abe, it's your willingness to kind of swallow your pride and go in and show some love in that moment. And it's Abe's willingness as a young kid to be forgiving of his dad's chucking his present into the trash. But seriously, it's like that forgiveness and that, right? Those two things, I think that love fosters forgiveness. And
Tyler, we talk legacy all the time.
Yeah.
And I think what that teaches me is the way to actually make things stick in the hearts and minds of children and other people around us is love. I think love is that agent that's going to there. Stick. Right?
Yeah.
There's something powerful there.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I've had to memorize a lot of things throughout my career, and they've always taught that memory attached to emotion or attached to some emotional feeling, you will remember those things a lot better than you will if there's nothing, if it's just pure cold memory. But if you attach it, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, right? I mean, and that's the battle I think that we wage. And I think, like, I was just talking to a group of kids, a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about this idea of like, let's for a second be really intentional about transformative memories that we have, right? That maybe solidify some things that are core beliefs for us that put us in the right spot. And then it was like, they were like, okay. And then I was like, all right, cool. So we're all on the same page. We understand that. So let's write them down and then let's talk about what we wrote down. And like the conversation shifts like in a big way, right? Because the act of writing it down and then telling someone about it, it was just like, boom, you were right there again. Right. And you're just like, oh yeah, this was the thing that got me there. This is why I'm here. That's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
There's a reason in the Book of Mormon, it's remembers over 500 times, right?
Yeah. Right.
Drill it into you, man.
Yeah. I mean, Tyler, that idea, I don't know when I got this idea, maybe when I was, struggling spiritually in my life, but where I would journal all my like inspiration stuff, everything that come to me it is like an iron rod for me now, like I go back and those same feelings, those same thoughts come right back to me, and it's all on my phone. I just type it on my phone and I've got a little note section with those. And man, that has been a gold mine for me to go back and see like, all right, this is exactly what I felt and to be reminded. So you're so right about that.
And you're the second or third person, Mike, that's told us about the notes on the phone, keeping that journal. And, and my daughter I was talking to my daughter, Abigail, a few months back, and she was complaining about some stuff, she's up at BYU. She was kind of complaining. And then at the end of it, she said, but every day I write down all the miracles that I see throughout the day. And I think like that's the key, right? It's that idea of in the middle of it. And I think that we have to recognize that more often than not, we're in the middle of it. Right. And so if we're in the middle of it and we have that ability to sort of take a second, take a breath, and I love that idea of having that note to reflect on or a journal to reflect on, or even if that's just a quick recall and be able to say, okay, this sucks, but life is good. And you talked about that, Mike, but.
So you have a moment, right? You have a moment with your sister. Your sister basically sounds like a switch is flipped in your life, and you have this opportunity to give some space. Talk to me a little bit, Jeremy. Where do we go from here? Where does life go from here after those kind of tumultuous middle school, early high school years?
Yeah. So, finish up high school. I actually met my wife in high school. So that was a pretty transformative experience too. In fact, it's a pretty cool story. When we were down in Chula Vista in Tyler's congregation, they were doing this video called The District. And it was like something to try and teach missionaries how certain things should look. And so they came and they were in our ward, and they would bring cameras in and do all this stuff. It's very weird, but there was one day where we spoke in church. We were the speakers, and we shared our story, how we met, and how my wife, her faith story and everything. And so they called us into a room afterwards, like, hey, we want to interview you, come in here and do it. But here's the bummer, man. We could have been famous, but those big lights that they put up, with the cameras around, like, I don't know, the Waldram genetics were like sweaty people, it's like our hands, whatever. So I'm like, I keep sweating on my lip, and the guy
lip sweat's the worst.
Oh, it's the worst. And it's like, once the faucet starts, like, there's no stopping it. But so he's really nice at first. The guy's like, hey, just get your lip. And then after like the 15th time, he's kind of like annoyed, just come on, man. So anyway,
and that only makes it worse, right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Now that I'm aware of it, it's like, and this is going to get really
even
bad.
more because this guy's telling you,
Yeah, you have made this so much worse. So safe to say, we did not make the cut for the district. But my wife's, but the story of it, I mean, it's cool. We met in high school, and
what's her name?
Her name's Jamie.
Jamie, okay.
Yeah, so Jamie had a good friend, Becca. Jamie moved to Ashby when she was a sophomore, and one of her friends actually had a crush on me at the time. I was like, hey, I got to show you this guy, Jeremy. And so we met, and I'm like, did you like feel anything? Like, right. Like, and she's like, not really. I can hardly remember it. But we ended up meeting and started dating in high school. And, she ended up, she and her mom, I baptized she and her mom. And as a young man, like at that age, that's a big deal. Yeah, it was a huge deal. Like, talk about melting heart, right after getting out of the water there, just tears, being able to experience that, being able to be part of seeing their faith journey, and seeing someone, her mom was, probably in her early 50s at that time, late 40s, and seeing her take that transition and ask really good questions, and to be able to be part of that. So that happened. And then after high school, I went on my church mission to Spain, and those 2 years. And then when I came back, Jamie waited most of the time I was gone, and then started dating the last 6 months. I'm always like, what? You were so far. like, why the last 6 months? But anyway, I got back, and we got married in probably 4 or 5 months. It would not have been that quick had I not already known her, but it was kind of like, it was obvious. And so we went off to college in California. I went to college. She had already graduated, and then decided I was going to go to medical school. So went to USC for medical school. And then after that, Navy for a little while. I was in the military, kind of went through a scholarship program through them. And that's how we ended up in San Diego for 8 years. And then they took us to North Carolina, and then got out of the military and came here to Idaho. And that's kind of like where things went that way, at least all that part of it.
I'd love to get Jamie's take on the sweaty interview. I mean, I feel like she'd have some good insight.
Yeah, no, Tyler, it's embarrassing, man. Those gloves that I feel bad for my daughters, but like, those gloves that doctors have that are like, straight, like, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to put one of those on and like I can't get it on my hands because it's like, and I'm so embarrassed. I'm just like, I'm sorry, this is gonna take a minute, you know. Like.
Talk to me, and this is an impossible question, and it's kind of unfair, but like Spain and your time there.
Yeah.
In my mind, I've got a list called people that can do hard things. And it's people that have served missions in Spain and Australia.
And France.
Right?
And France.
And France.
That's on my list too. Yeah.
Spain. What did that experience do for you as a young man?
Yeah, amazing experience. Very hard, very difficult in that way. Just as far as like success, you know, is not necessarily what you would see in some other places, but had some very, very cool experiences, some very, very good personal growth experiences, learning how I would say that was probably the point in my life earlier with my sister in high school is when my heart changed and I wanted to do right, but was still pretty self-centered. And I think getting out there about 4 to 6 months in, I realized, you know, this is gonna be a long 2 years if I keep focusing on me. So I better start focusing on other people, learn how to serve other people, forget myself, all, you know, those kind of typical things. But it was very true for me. And so I think that was kind of the catalyst, the first time in my life where I was really able to do that and then see the fruits of that, hey, you can forget yourself and have a whole lot of joy and more joy than you could experience by just focusing on you. So yeah, obviously a ton of good experiences from that and some pretty powerful ones about love and all that. But so tough mission, but wonderful and great. And I had happened to undergo that change of heart before I ever went. And so I was ready. I was ready to be a missionary. And I knew that the atonement was real and all of that. And so unfortunately, some companions I had, they hadn't really gone through some of those same experiences and so maybe weren't, you know, quite as ready, but no, I was ready to be a missionary. I had screwed up a lot of things before that. And now I was ready to actually do some good things as a missionary. But beautiful place. If you ever get a chance to go, I was in the southern part of Spain. My mission.
I've been to north and south. Yeah.
Have you really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it included parts of Africa and Gibraltar, which is English speaking, and then Spain. Yeah. So yeah, cool place.
Yeah. So could you tell me something that you have learned in life that you learned the hard way?
I think you guys talked about this a little bit earlier, but I realized that that relationships, and we talked about this going back to the marriage thing, but relationships that matter, or relationships that you really care about, come with a lot of work, come with a lot of sacrifice, that they're not just going to be there just because your name, your relationship, you know, just because I'm a sibling, I'm your brother, doesn't mean that we're going to have a good relationship if I don't put in the time and the effort. And a couple of things kind of brought that to my attention the hard way. When I was in medical school, there was a lot of studying and I had my oldest daughter at the time. She was pretty young, but she came up to me one time. This was toward the end of medical school. And she said, "Hey, Dad, can you spend some time with me?" And before I could even say a word, she's like, "Never mind. I'm sure you have to study." And like, oh, like, you know, like that hurts. And then in medical school as well, that, you know, is very weird. I was probably the only one married in my entire class at USC, and only 2 of us had a kid. And so I was in a very different stage than a lot of the other people. They were pretty fresh out of undergrad, and they would invite me to a lot of things. They'd invite me to like Taco Tuesdays and these different activities. And I never went, and I just felt like, hey, I've got a family. I'm going to spend time with my family or whatever. But when we got to graduation day, you know, I remember this moment. They were all celebrating and hugging each other. And I was like, I don't really feel connected to like any of these people. Like they're like, and not that it was a big deal, but it was a good reminder to me, and something that I just remember that feeling of like, wow, I'm kind of left out. And it reminded me that, well, yeah, because they invited you to do all these things, but you never sacrificed any time to be with them, and you never spent any of that time that they were spending with each other. So how would you think that you're going to have this amazing relationship now when you didn't put in the work. Yeah, they worked for it. And so it was a really, really powerful lesson for me moving forward, that the relationships I care about, whether it be God, my wife, my kids, other people, it's time. You put in time, you put in work, you put in effort, or don't be surprised when that relationship's not going to be what you wanted it to be or thought it should be.
Yeah, I'm taking that to heart. I mean, I think that I think of so many times the opportunity that we have to develop faith and testimony and truth. I sometimes take that for granted, right? I've received answers, and those answers were the result of some work on my part. And I think sometimes it's almost like there's a verse in the Book of Mormon in Mosiah. It's like, how knoweth a master, right? Who, when the servant is far from thoughts and intents of their heart. And I think it's important that we, again, going back to giving space, right? As busy med students, as busy husbands and fathers, do we give space for those relationships that matter, including those relationships with our Heavenly Father, right? Those relationships with Jesus Christ. Like, what does that look like? And is he sitting there thinking, man, Mike, you're feeling pretty far away from me right now, and could you give me a minute? Right? Almost like your daughter. Hey, yeah. Could you spend some time with me? Oh, that's right. You're busy.
Yeah,
that's hard.
Never forget.
Jeremy, what are you hoping your kids are learning from you and Jamie and watching you?
Yeah, I mean, I think about the people that I admire the most, and we've talked about it, but it's the people that are selfless, and I remember one guy in particular. When we lived in North Carolina, we were part of a pretty big hurricane, Hurricane Florence, that came through and was one of the biggest hurricanes they've had in North Carolina in a lot of years. And after the aftermath was pretty intense, church services for us for about 3 months involved showing up in work clothes, and you would have a short little sacrament service, and then they give you an assignment, if you're willing, to go out and cut down trees that had fallen down, haul away things, water damage, pulling out drywall, that kind of stuff. And there was a man named Barry Humphreys, 78 years old. We were on this really, really tough assignment, and I brought a couple of my kids, but it got really tiring. I remember looking around, I'm like, man, I'm exhausted. Like, I got to be done with this. And I look over, and this 78-year-old guy in the heat of North Carolina, Barry Humphreys, working right alongside us. And I kid you not, that guy would periodically fall down, and I'd be like, Barry, you okay? And he'd be like, old man just needs a breath, just needs to catch his breath. And he would get right back up, keep working, whatever. And I just remember what the impression that had on me. And I want my kids to see me like Barry Humphreys, and that. I think one of the things that's really influenced me lately is I don't remember where I read this concept. It was probably in North Carolina, but it's really come back to me now pretty strongly, is that we have a lot of encounters every day with a lot of different people. And we think of most of them as transactions. They're just a simple, like, I pay you and you bag my groceries or whatever it is. Like, these are all just little like transactions. And whoever it was said, I encourage you or ask you to look at opportunities for transformative experiences, not just transactions. And it's made a world of difference for me and my patients. The one that I was telling you about the other day that I asked her about her husband, like, I would have never done that before. I was so busy to get to the next patient, or so preoccupied to get to the next patient. And like, I have a busy day, I've got 20 plus patients and I'm trying to work through them all. And so there were a lot of transactions and not a lot of transformative experiences. And it's been amazing. Like, now that I'm looking for them, not every experience is going to be like that. Some of them just are transactions, and that's the way it is. But if you have an open mind and you're like, hey, this could be a moment for somebody, this could be that hinge moment for them, or this could be an opportunity to make a difference for them. I've had some cool experiences, you know, where I just took a few seconds to say, hey, you seem like you're down a little bit. Like, what is it? It's been really cool. And so going back to my kids, I want them to see that about me. I want them to see that, like, they get embarrassed by me and like, they like, why you waving to that guy or whatever. But like, I want them to see that I really care about people and that I want to help them, that I'm genuine in that. And I'm not a perfect guy, but I care, and I'm trying to have transformative experiences and help other people. So I think that's the best way I would summarize what I want my kids to see me as.
So because those moments of impact, right? I mean, yeah. I think if you reverse engineer some of these things that we talk to people about, Tyler, on this podcast, I know we're in it to learn, right? We invite Jeremy on to learn from his life. But man, if we can realize what people have done for us and then walk out tomorrow with the intent and look for an opportunity to have that same impact on someone in our path, I think that's powerful. And you every once in a while you hit a home run, it's probably going to be a bunch of singles, right? It's probably going to be a bunch of little things that maybe aren't quite transactional. Maybe they're kind transactions, right? But I mean, I think that every once in a while you're going to hit right place, right time, and you're going to say what needs to be said to soften someone's heart, right? And
I love the intentionality of that, right?
Yep.
I mean, if we're seeking it, I mean, that's powerful, man.
But you got to be grounded in your own stuff in order to be able to have eyes to see those opportunities, right? Yeah. Because if we're not good, if we're not square, if we're unhinged, there's no way you're going to be able to show up in a space and interact with someone and leave them on higher ground.
Yeah. I love the idea of that's something you want your kids to see about you, you know, because I love the idea of them picking up on that, right? And incorporating that into their own space where they're living now. You know, that's a big deal. I mean, no matter what that looks like, right? You know, I've had times where I've seen my kids interact, whether it's with an adult or with another youth, and I'm just like, man, that's crazy. Like, you know, like, wow, where did they? Thank goodness for Ricky, right? Like, yeah. But it's powerful. I mean, I think that, you know, we go back to that conversation about modeling, you know, and I think that's where it starts, Mike, right? If we're intentional about it and it's part of who we are, it's not just something that we do on a Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m., right? And then we turn it off, we go do whatever else, but we're intentional about it. It's part of who we are. It bleeds into who they are, right? And I love
that intention. To me, I think living this rich life, and we're not there, but we're trying to get there. But I think that part of it is that we consistently show up wherever we consistently show up as the same guy.
Yeah.
You know, I think my nightmare is for those closest to me to not recognize a Mike Freeman that maybe coworkers are describing. And that is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to step into the space and be like, no, that's Mike. That's going to be Mike. That's going to be Mike in a hurricane. That's going to be Mike in calm waters. That consistency is, I think, the ultimate test of character. But man, Jeremy, I love this idea of, I talked to somebody who served down in Central America and a hurricane hit. He was serving his mission. He said, man, that thing hit and we just cleaned up mud for 6 months. And those people loved us so much. We spent the next 6 months teaching,
harvesting,
because they didn't care.
Yeah.
Right? They don't care. They don't care what you know, but man, when they see you in it with them, then you're living the lesson. And it's like, talk to me about what you got. Talk to me about your faith, because I've seen you next to me shoveling mud.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's something powerful about that.
Jeremy, we're big on honoring people in this podcast, and tonight you've talked about Misty, you've talked about Jamie, you've talked about your mom and dad, you've talked about Barry Humphries, right?
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that you'd like to give a shout out to honor here in this space?
I mean, all the ones you just named there, honestly, are probably, if you talk from me, like big heroes or whatever, but this is not necessarily a specific person, but it's been interesting for me when sometimes we feel like we're the only ones who struggle with a certain thing, right? And you look at other people and you're like, oh yeah, like Tyler squared away. There's no way he would struggle with that. And you maybe even get embarrassed with things that you struggle with. And one thing that's been really, really cool is I have a really, really good group of guys here. And some of them I looked at that way. But then I kind of let down my pride a little bit and said, and opened up a little bit to some things that, hey, I struggle with this, and it's amazing how you will learn that all these people that you think are so squared away that they probably struggle with similar things or have gone through that. And it's so cool to listen. I used to respect them because I thought they were perfect and all squared away. Now I respect them because I know that they're not, but they're still committed and still faithful to working towards that and getting there. Right. Like I respect them because they are pressing forward despite struggling, despite having certain questions, or despite going through things that maybe I'm going through too. So I know that's kind of a roundabout way, but I mean, there's a lot of guys here in my area that I feel that way about, that have been such a good resource to me. And it's been so awesome to see people you really admire, like, oh, really? Like, why was I embarrassed about that? Like, yeah, like, God, it's lifted me up so much to be able to talk to people. And I kind of think that in a way is what you guys are doing by inviting people to think about these things and to talk about these things. And guys aren't always good about that. But it's really, really good to reflect on these things and be able to hear that other people are going through some of those things too. And you can be faithful without being, perfect, or, you can be committed without, with still having some things that need to be settled.
Yeah. It reminds me of, a guest taught us that, transparency is the cornerstone of friendship. Right. And when we get to that point where we're willing to bare our souls a little bit, and you're spot on. It's, we Mike, you talk about being a fixer, right? And I think in this space is, I think everyone has this to a certain degree, but men for sure, right? Where you're like, I don't want to open up too much. We got to protect what we've got here. And the reality is when you open the doors, man, you're inviting people to help build you. Right. Okay. And I think that's powerful.
Well, I want to put a call out to anyone and everyone that's listening. We got to talk to somebody. It's like our guest last week, right, Tyler? Like, hey, who are you talking to? Right. His wife went up, Keeper's wife goes up to him. Is like, who are you talking to? You need to talk to somebody. And I want to shout out to Derek Anderson. Derek Anderson's a former guest on Richest Men in Town, and he's got a group called Coffees and Jesus, and they get together Saturday morning. One of these Saturday mornings, I'm just going to crash that place and hang out. And my understanding, it sounds like some guys are getting together and just talking about Jesus and what faith looks like. And here's the beautiful thing about it: the closer you draw to people, the more you love them. Yeah. It's almost like that whole idea, like, well, I don't want them to see my flaws, or I don't want them to see. Actually, it becomes this thing of marvel, right? I awe at the people that I love because of their flaws.
Right.
I look at them like, oh my goodness, I value who you are as a person of faith. I value your influence on me and other people. But I've seen you from close quarters, and I know your imperfections, and I love you more. Right. And that's just a God thing. Like it's almost like a piece of art, right? The closer you draw to it, the more beautiful it might become. And I think that there's just something powerful when people live lives like that. And Tyler, we've been spoiled, right? I mean, Jeremy, thank you for coming on, because we get midweek church hanging out with guys like you. And I think that there's just something powerful about sitting down with that. And it's the reverse of Ether 12:27, right? That idea that weaknesses are given to us so that we'll be made humble. The grace of the Lord Jesus Christ is sufficient for us, that if we acknowledge our weaknesses, they'll become strengths. So if we're admiring somebody for their strengths, quite possibly that was a weakness that they just turned over to the Lord and it became a strength. Right? So it's not an ego thing. There is no ego in this, in strength of faithful folks. It's just, yeah, I handed that over to God and he's done some cool things with it, right? Whatever.
Love it.
Hey, can you paint me a picture? Jeremy, paint me a picture of a time. Share with us a moment in life when you're looking around and you have a thought, man, right now, everything in this moment is rich.
I think probably for me, it's, and I think I've heard other people say something similar, and it just must be that's the spot. But with the people you love and them people sharing and talking, and you can tell everyone's in it, everyone's listening, everyone's talking to each other, and usually it's around the dinner table for me, with my family, my kids, and we're just having a great discussion, and people are actually like listening to each other and doing all that kind of stuff. Again, this is not like we were talking about before. This doesn't happen every time. This is occasional, but those I think for me that's the richness, and really I guess it because it comes down to for me richness is relationships, and the strength of those relationships and the fruits of those relationships with God and my family and those things. So when you get to see that, you get to see a little bit of the fruit of what that can be like. That's richness for me. I guess the only other thing I would probably say is that one of the things that's been a big blessing is that I think I was talking to my wife today as we were walking our dog around the block that understanding what the true definition of a trial and a blessing really is makes a world of difference for me in my life as far as richness, when knowing that for a lot of people, a trial is anything that causes some discomfort, anything that causes some struggle or some pain or anything like that. Whereas a blessing is anything that feels good, that is maybe easy or pleasurable, that kind of stuff. But for God, a trial could be anything that separates me from him, and a blessing could be anything that gets me closer to him. And when you change the definition that way, there are a lot of things that we go through in my life. This is a bigger topic than that, but one of my children having OCD and going through some of that, you could look at that as like a lot, maybe the world without the lens of God would look at that as a big trial, but it's amazing. Those things can turn out to be big blessings. And so there's just a richness in being able to see the world that way, that like, look, bring it on. I may not like what's coming and what's happening, but I understand that I can define what's going to be a blessing and a trial in my life and how I respond to it. So I think there's some power in that.
Let's go with that for the next 2 hours, man. That's seriously.
It makes me think of careful what you call, calling good evil and evil good. Sometimes we may raise a fist at this thing and be like, really, why is this happening? And he's like, oh, you don't see it. You don't see it yet. Give it time.
Yeah, that's a cool thought. That's a really cool thought.
But how dare he drop that on us on the way out?
That's tough, man. I do love that thought, though. I mean, the idea of, with hindsight, right? With enough space on some difficult things, like there's things that I've been through that I've thought in the middle of it, like this is the worst, man. And then you get 6 months down the road and you're like, dude, that thing changed my life, And you're just like, that I don't want it again. that thing did some good work, So that's a powerful thought. Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy, so we patterned this whole thing after It's a Wonderful Life, classic Christmas movie with George Bailey. And I there's a scene, George at the end of his rope, right? He goes to the bridge. 122 people commit suicide every day in this country. 300 people die of opioid overdose every day in this country. If you're in someone's ear and maybe they landed on this podcast and maybe they're getting close to the end of their rope, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. Obviously, all those circumstances are going to be a little bit different for each one of them, but we've mentioned already that there's undoubtedly somebody you can talk to, somebody around you. I mean, for me personally, it really does come down to hope, which you talked about earlier. And that's a whole different discussion. But for me, hope comes from, I've heard it said, daily patterns of personal worship, and so spending that time with God and every day, like finding a way to hear him, and not just whether you're studying scriptures or doing things like that, but praying to be heard, studying the scriptures to hear him. That needs to be a regular thing because that brings hope. And it's kind of what I said with the trials and the blessings. Like if you don't understand that, if you don't have that perspective that all of these things can work out for your good, then it's going to lead to a lack of hope, right? You're not going to feel like there's any hope when like I'm going through this difficult thing with my health. I have cancer, or I'm dealing with a child with OCD or a child with this or that. But if you have hope by communing with God every day, then those things, that perspective will completely change. And it's hard. It's hard when you're in the moment, like Tyler was saying. It's easier to look back, but you've got to find hope, and not just transient hope, but permanent hope, eternal hope. Hope that's not going to change based on the circumstances of your life.
I love that, because if you think to that movie, right, where he's at that same bridge later, and after having some experiences, in his prayer, he says, "God, I just want to live again."
I want to live again.
Yeah.
And I think that I love that you mentioned that hope, Jeremy, because I think the opposite of hope is not despair. The opposite of hope is actually apathy. This idea that I am not in control of anything in my life, and therefore tomorrow won't be better than today, and I don't have anything to do with it. So I'm just going to detach from my life, yield agency, and I'm going to not care. And if you think about it, I'm going to harden my heart.
Yeah.
And I think that daily pricking of the heart, right? That what can you do to feel that? Tyler, we talk about a good day, just that laugh, think, be moved to tears, feel some kind of emotion, feel something, reminding us that we've got a spirit in us, right? Reminding us that adversity actually is part of probably the blessings designed for our growth, and not necessarily something to be cursed. So
good stuff.
Great conversation.
Jeremy,
okay, so we talked. You took us to the I Want to Live Again. That's my favorite part. That's my favorite part of the movie. But from there, he gets picked up. He gets taken into the house. The whole town comes in. Mary works her miracle, and they just start bringing in money, probably from bowls of change on somebody's bed. Right? And Harry Bailey comes in and toasts his big brother George as the richest man in town, and we love everything about that. And we end every podcast episode with that question for our guests. So, Jeremy, what does it mean to you to be considered the richest man in town?
Yeah, so a relationship with God, hope, faith, good relationships with my family, good relationships with others, and striving to get better, to be better, I think for me, that's what brings richness to my life. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
I love it, man. It's been fun to see.
Tyler Gould, you know some rich folks, man. You just pulled Jeremy out of your pocket. It's like, I got this guy up in Idaho. Let's bring him in.
Hey, man.
Jeremy,
he went from California to Idaho and he survived that move. So he's doing something right, man.
Hard things, man.
Jeremy's doing a lot of things right. I've loved our conversation tonight, and I really appreciate some of the things that I'm taking away from it.
Jeremy, it's been fun, man. Tell Jamie thank you for letting us borrow you for a few hours. We appreciate you. It's good to see you. It's good to hear your voice, and look forward to meeting up again sometime.
Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate what you do.
Okay, have a good night.
All right.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.